Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres of literature, so let's go back to medieval England and share a few. Hello, everybody. My name is Rob. This is my mom, Karen, and you're watching Books, Banter, and Beyond. Today, we're going to go over a genre that we both actually seem to like and agree on historical fiction, specifically around medieval England. So, we both know, since we've read various books on historical fiction, every area seems to have their stories, and all the stories are based on some sort of actual event, with obviously liberties taken, which is why it's fiction in the name of historical fiction. But all of these stories that we've read usually do cover an event in history, a people, maybe a ruler or a government, whatever it is. And it's interesting because you're saying to me offline that when you read it, you remember that you learned about it or you saw it somewhere. And that kind of makes it interesting to me as well, because I like the fact that I know the general story, and now I get to see a version of it that, part of it is going to be made up. But for the most part, these authors, they took the story to heart, and they drew it up.
I actually think it makes history more enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, because the one thing I never did when I was studying history was we never got into this. Now, obviously, when you take history, that's separate than taking English. But I do think that if a teacher or a class were to maybe blend a historical fiction into their history, it may entertain people a little bit more. Obviously, you do have to always caveat, things you read may be made up. But I agree with you. I think if a history class were to want to bring in more eyeballs or viewers, maybe throw in a fiction just to kind of give some, it makes for a great discussion. You can always say what went right, what went wrong, what didn't you like, what did you like. And I think I found two that are fairly popular. First one here by the man Ken Follett, which we're talking about, who has written many different genres. I believe you said he also has done spy kind of thriller, stuff like that as well. The book I found is called The Pillars of the Earth. It's actually the first book in that series there. And this basically weaves a day-to-day life of medieval England. You have the master builder named Tom. You have Aliena, the ravishing, beautiful noblewoman. You have Philip, the prior of Kingsbridge. You have Jack, an artist who works in stone. And you have Ellen, who is a woman of the forest who casts a terrifying curse. So I guess she's kind of the magical, maybe witch character there. And it's something that a lot of people will do. It's one of those stories where you intertwine multiple people, and it's like they all come together in one giant story. And it's a very interesting way of looking at history back then. They talk about the building of cathedrals, the artistry. We were actually just talking about in our last episode about how visual things can be kind of eerie depending on how you see it. They talk about the work of the stonemasons as the character there. And he weaves in everything you want in a good drama adventure. You've got betrayal, you've got revenge, you've got love. You even have the humiliation of a king by a guy who shouldn't have that kind of power to do so. So, I mean, it's a very interesting, intricate book based on ideas and characters, even if the names may have been changed, still actual characters that would have been around in that kind of dynamic. And we've talked about before how there's the levels of government. You have the leader, the workers, all that.
Right, and it's also the time period. So when he's writing all of this, he's the story is in the front, but the background is literally the location and the place and what was going on during that time. So I think that's what makes it historical fiction, right? Is that
I mean, you have him writing his story, and then you have him writing a story in an area, not even a land, because a land usually means it's made up. Literally an area that is a real place. In this case, somewhere in England around that time.
Right.
The next one we have here is called Catherine by Anya, Seton, and Philippa Gregory. Philippa Gregory has written, I believe, a lot of historical romances before. And this one is something similar. It basically covers the story of Catherine Swynford and John of Gaunt, who's the Duke of Lancaster. They're the ancestors of most of what the British families we have are today.
Mm.
So not only does it kind of go down the line of what we end up now or what we end up with today, but it obviously has that fun love story between the two. She calls it a love affair between these two people, obviously signifying that he was supposed to maybe marry somebody else.
Right, right,
Instead, he ended up with her. You have all the aspects of a good romance. You have the danger. You have the you know
right.
the the war, murder, everything. I mean, it's all fun, right? But this is definitely a very good style, I think, because to me, and again, anybody out there who has read more, what I've read of England, a lot of this is kind of signified in most of the story. So there's always this kind of, betrayal and overcoming and revenge and whatever. Think back to like Shakespeare when he wrote, things like Macbeth and Hamlet. There was always that dichotomy of,
Right,
I
right,
have at you because you did this to my family. So again, another, like you said, another backdrop
right.
story up front.
And I'm looking at our notes over here. The first publication was in 1954. First of all, I don't want to make myself as old as I really am. Why not? I am. But I was born in 1956, so this book was written before I was born, which I thought this was a more current book. So this is actually an older book.
So I mean, I guess it just goes to show, yeah.
Wow. So I haven't read this. We know that I haven't read this. I'm actually thinking I should go read this now and see what why it was written in that time in
Right.
1954, and what was going on in 1954 at that point. I mean, we were in between wars and we were in between all sorts of stuff going on right then. Interesting.
That's true. That's true. And I think that a lot of times somebody will write a book depending on what's happening. So maybe there
Right.
is a connection between, life and fiction.
So, what about the background of medieval England? Do people seem to love so much?
Um, I think I would use the word Gothic. It's got that beauty and kind of eeriness about it. I think generally speaking, something that the area is known for are the cathedrals, the castles, the architecture. So I think visually, it's something that you want to be in. You want to see the places, but at the same time, you see all this stuff. And I would say, it only happens then, but we know this still happens today. So it's not like this stuff is any different. But I think it's kind of the blend of both the good and the bad, and that's what makes people so enveloped in it. And I think when you have the beauty and the anger, I guess, and you kind of put it together, you get this really like explosive
Right.
dialogue, right? So
Yeah. Well, before we came on, I said to you my favorite kind of book, if I'm not reading personal development, which I do a lot, all you have to do is go look at my bookshelf. But when I'm not, the type of book I like to read is historical fiction, it's based on true stories, based on something true
right.
with a story wrapped around it. And I think you said the same thing. You like historical novels.
Yeah, and I think because some people will question, do you prefer a book that's more true than fiction? And I think most people would probably say they'd want something that has at least a little bit of
It's an anchor.
reality to it.
It's an anchor.
I love a good fiction, don't get me wrong, but I think when it comes to history, or even like if you're doing something about science or something like that, you want it to have realism to it because I think just personally, the author is not only trying to entertain you, but possibly teach you. And if they're going to teach
Right.
you, they should have the right information, right? So I
Right.
think,
It's sort of like an anchor. Sort of like just anchors you into the
okay,
time, into
yeah,
everything else going on. Because if you can't grab on, it almost becomes not believable. A fiction book to me that there's no anchor, and I use the word anchor it's my language, but something
okay.
that I can attribute to. Oh yeah, I know that place, or it relates. It speaks to me. Then I don't. I tend, and I'm realizing as we're talking, I don't read the book because it doesn't speak to me. There's nothing in it that grabs me and says, "Oh yeah, Karen, this is something you've read about or something you've heard about or you've been there or it's interesting." Otherwise, it's total fantasy. And I guess I don't like fantasy books. I guess.
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm reading a book now where it's based about dragons, but it's written in a way where she's actually a scientist and she's studying them as a person would any other animal. And even though you know she's studying a made up animal,
Right,
you still believe she's doing actual work
right.
because she's
There you
studying.
go.
And that's what makes it so enjoyable. I mean, I love the aspect of the fantasy stuff, but I love the fact more that she's literally doing a job that somebody does in real life, i.e.,
Yeah,
naturalist, scientist, whatever. So yeah, there is something about when you read a book, especially history, science, whatever, that I do appreciate when they actually tell me something I know because I go, "Hey, I learned that in school," or
right.
I watched that.
Exactly. I want to put up our show card right now. We can pick up all sorts of books in the next chapter, bookstore.shop, including historical fiction. Check out the paperbacks and hardbound. You know the drill, guys. Take your phone out. You can scan any one of these QR codes, the comic books, or of course mugs, t-shirts, etc., etc. All sorts of cool things. I love this. I love this particular show because I really like these kind of stories. I'm a Mary Queen of Scots kind of gal. I probably read a gazillion stories that they're all about her, but they're different. And because it's historical fiction and it's the imagination, right, of the author that
Yeah, exactly.
same
Perfectly
thing.
well said.
Same thing. If we're not talking books, The Crown, which is it literally is a television show, right? It's been how many different seasons at this point? It has followed the historical fiction, but
Uh-huh.
not so much fiction of the royal family and where they are now. And if you watch it, I know that we hear people saying, "Yeah, but that didn't really happen. That one little thing." That's what makes it historical fiction. Is that
Right.
the majority is true, but let's spice it up a little bit. So I love this. If you guys like these kind of books, let us know. We'd love to hear if these are your favorite kind of stories, or if maybe there's something else that you like. Let us know because we'd love to do a show on it. Right, Rob?
Of course, let us know in the comments. We'll be happy to see what we can do and come back with some more fun book topics.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next time on Books Banter and beyond. Goodbye, everyone.